My name is Leela Anderson, 35 years old, and until yesterday I was the administrative specialist at Horizon Technologies for 8 years. I built our filing system from scratch, making it efficient but secure. Then Marcus arrived, our new director, with his Silicon Valley swagger. "You are just admin," he sneered while firing me without transition plans. Now, as their crucial $270 million merger hangs in balance, a password prompt has appeared. Everyone is staring at the screen in silent panic. Let me tell you how we got here. Before I start this wild corporate roller coaster story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories of workplace justice. Trust me, you will want to see how this all unfolds. When I first joined Horizon Technologies, it was supposed to be a temporary position. Fresh out of college with my information management systems degree, I needed something to pay the bills while I looked for my real career. That was 8 years ago. What started as a 3-month receptionist placement transformed into nearly a decade of building what I thought was a meaningful career. My previous boss, Barbara Winters, saw something in me beyond my ability to answer phones and schedule meetings. "Layla, you have a systems mind," she told me during my 6-month review. "The way you reorganized the front office filing in 2 weeks showed me you can think strategically." Within a year, she had promoted me to administrative specialist, a position that evolved under my tenure to encompass far more than traditional admin work. What many people do not understand about administrative roles is that we become the central nervous system of a company. Every document, every meeting, every process flows through us. At Horizon, a mid-sized tech company specializing in healthcare software, I became the keeper of institutional knowledge. When engineers needed historical specs from 3 years ago, they came to me. When the finance team needed contract versions to compare, I had them organized and accessible within minutes. My education actually proved perfect for this role. Information management systems is all about organizing data for maximum efficiency and security. I applied those principles to create a digital filing system that Barbara called revolutionary for our workflow. The system I built was complex on the back end, but intuitive for users, with one critical feature that would later become the center of this drama: enhanced security protocols for our most sensitive documents. The culture at Horizon under Barbara was collaborative and respectful. She understood that titles did not define value. Our receptionist, Rachel, was included in strategic discussions about client experience. Kyle from maintenance had a standing monthly meeting with Barbara because she valued his insights on our physical workspace. And I was invited to leadership meetings not to take notes, but to contribute ideas about information flow and process improvement. An organization is only as strong as its least valued member, Barbara would say, and I intend for everyone to be highly valued. My closest ally was Ryan Murphy from IT. While technically I was not part of his department, we worked closely on the digital architecture of my filing system. "What you built is impressive," Ryan told me once, while we were implementing a security update. "Most of the executives have no idea how advanced this is. You essentially created a custom document management system from scratch, using only the tools they approved in the budget." Denise Franklin in Human Resources was another friend and supporter. She appreciated how my system made her job easier, allowing her to access personnel files securely while maintaining strict confidentiality. We often had lunch together, and she was the first to warn me about the changes coming. "The board is talking about bringing in new blood," she told me over sandwiches about 3 months ago. "Barbara is close to retirement age, and they want someone with a more aggressive growth mindset. I am worried about how that might affect the culture she built." Thomas Reed, our chief financial officer, was more complex in his relationship with me. He relied heavily on my organizational skills, especially for the quarterly financial reports and audits. I created special encrypted folders for his most sensitive financial documents with security protocols that exceeded company requirements. He appreciated my work, but always maintained a professional distance. "Your system saves me hours every week, Layla," he told me once during a particularly complex audit. I just wish I understood how it worked better. What I did not tell him was that was by design. The security measures I implemented meant that no one person had complete access to everything, a feature Barbara had specifically requested to prevent data breaches. The various department heads at Horizon all interacted with my system daily, from Sophia in marketing to James in product development. They knew me, respected my work, and often brought me cookies or coffee as thanks for solving their file emergencies. I felt valued even if my title did not sound impressive. Then came the announcement that would begin to unravel everything. During a company-wide meeting 6 months ago, Thomas announced that Horizon was in preliminary discussions for a potential merger with Apex Global, a larger competitor in the healthcare software space. "This represents a tremendous opportunity for growth," he said, his voice carefully measured. "But it will also require us to streamline operations and potentially restructure certain departments to eliminate redundancies." The mood in the office shifted immediately. Whispered conversations in break rooms, nervous glances during meetings, sudden interest in updating resumes. I noticed it all from my central position, but felt relatively secure. After all, my system was integral to daily operations, and any acquiring company would need someone who understood it. 2 months later, Barbara called me into her office. Her usually warm face was drawn, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "Layla, I wanted you to hear this from me first," she said quietly. "I have decided to take early retirement. The board and I have been discussing this for some time, and with the potential merger, it seems like the right moment for transition." My stomach dropped. When was all I could manage to ask? "End of the month. They have already selected my replacement, a Marcus Prescott from Innovatic in California. He has a strong track record of preparing companies for acquisitions." "What about the team? What about the systems we have built?" Barbara sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "I have recommended you strongly to him as an essential team member. I have detailed your contributions and the critical nature of your role." She paused. "But Layla, I feel I should prepare you. His management style is very different from mine." As it turned out, that was the understatement of the century. Marcus Prescott arrived at Horizon Technologies with the subtlety of a hurricane. His first day began with a company-wide meeting in our largest conference room, where Thomas introduced him as the visionary who will lead us into our next chapter. Marcus, tall and impeccably dressed in what I later learned was a $3,000 suit, took the stage with the confidence of a tech evangelist. "First, I want to thank Barbara for her years of service," he began, giving a cursory nod to my former boss, who sat quietly in the corner. "But now it is time to rocket Horizon into the 21st century. No more outdated processes, no more inefficient systems, no more resistance to change." Throughout his 30-minute presentation about synergistic disruption and agile transformation, Marcus did not once look in my direction, despite me sitting in the front row where Barbara had always requested I sit during leadership presentations. I told myself not to take it personally. He was new. He did not know the team yet. After the meeting, I approached him with my hand extended. "Welcome to Horizon, Mr. Prescott. I am Layla Anderson, Administrative Specialist. I would be happy to walk you through our filing system and information management protocols whenever you have time." He glanced at my outstretched hand, then at my face with a look one might give to a persistent salesperson. Sure. Send something to my assistant to schedule. Though I should warn you, we will be modernizing all administrative functions as soon as possible. Silicon Valley moves fast, and Horizon needs to catch up." Before I could respond, he turned to greet Thomas, effectively dismissing me. I stood there awkwardly for a moment before retreating to my desk, a knot forming in my stomach. In 8 years, no one at Horizon had spoken to me that way. The next day, I received a meeting request from Marcus's assistant Brittany, who I noticed he had brought with him rather than utilizing our existing administrative staff. The subject line read, "Systems Overview, 15 minutes. 15 minutes to explain a system I had built and refined over 8 years. It was impossible, but I would try. I prepared a condensed presentation focusing on the most critical aspects of the information architecture. When I arrived at the specified time, Marcus was typing on his phone and barely looked up. "Go ahead, I am listening," he said, still typing. I launched into my explanation, beginning with the overall structure. Our system is organized into 3 tiers of access, based on security clearance and need-to-know principles. The general tier is accessible to all employees and contains non-sensitive operational documents. The departmental tier requires specific credentials based on your team and role. The restricted tier, which houses our most sensitive financial and proprietary information, requires multiple levels of authentication and— Wait, Marcus interrupted, finally putting down his phone. "You mean employees cannot access all files? What kind of inefficient setup is that? In my previous companies, we had open access systems, maximum information flow." "With respect, Mr. Prescott, our system was designed with both efficiency and security in mind. Healthcare software contains sensitive patient data frameworks, and our financial documents for the merger are under strict confidentiality requirements from our lawyers and— He waved his hand dismissively. Any admin can file things alphabetically, Layla. I am sure your system is fine for a company of our current size, but we need to prepare for scaling. Brittany, make a note to have the IT department audit the current system and prepare recommendations for migration to our standard platform. The meeting ended after only 8 minutes. I had barely scratched the surface of explaining how things worked, and he had already decided to replace it. As I walked back to my desk, I felt invisible, my years of work dismissed with a wave of his hand. Over the next few weeks, Marcus brought in a team of consultants from his previous company, all young men with identical haircuts and an air of superiority. They were given a conference room next to my desk, which they transformed into what they called the war room, with workflow diagrams and technical specifications covering the walls. None of them ever asked me how our current systems worked. I was excluded from meetings I had previously attended as a matter of course. When the weekly leadership briefing appeared on my calendar without my name, I asked Brittany about it. "Oh, Marcus streamlined attendance," she said with a practiced smile. "Administrative staff will receive the notes afterward." The reassignment of my responsibilities began gradually. First, the company directory I had maintained was given to Brittany. Then the meeting scheduling system I had created was replaced with Marcus's preferred app, which everyone found confusing but no one dared criticize. Finally, my access to certain departmental folders was revoked without warning. IT security update was the only explanation I received when I called Ryan to ask what had happened. "I am sorry, Layla," Ryan said quietly over the phone. "It came directly from Marcus. I argued that it would disrupt workflows, but he insisted." My colleagues became increasingly distant. People who had previously stopped by my desk to chat now hurried past with averted eyes. Lunch invitations dwindled. I understood their fear, but it hurt nonetheless. The issue of the secure system came to a head during a department head meeting that I had not been invited to but heard about afterward from Sophia in marketing, who still felt loyal to me. Marcus went on a rampage about the secure financial folders, she whispered to me in the break room. He tried to access the merger documents during the meeting to make a point, and when he hit the password screen, he turned bright red. Thomas had to explain that there were security protocols in place that required specific credentials. "Did Thomas explain why those protocols exist?" I asked. He tried, but Marcus cut him off, said it was bureaucratic nonsense, and demanded immediate access to all files by end of day. Thomas looked really uncomfortable but did not push back. Later that afternoon, Marcus appeared at my desk, Thomas trailing behind him, looking concerned. "Layla, Thomas tells me you are the architect of our unnecessarily complicated security system," Marcus said without preamble. "I need all passwords and access protocols on my desk within the hour." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Prescott, I would be happy to help, but it is not quite that simple. The system was designed with segregated access specifically to protect our most sensitive information. No single person has all the passwords by design. It would require coordinating with several department heads and following our security override protocol, which typically takes 24 to 48 hours, and requires board notification for the highest level files." Marcus's face darkened. "This is exactly the kind of inefficiency I was brought in to eliminate. I am the director of this company. If I cannot access our files immediately, the system is broken." Thomas stepped forward. "Marcus, perhaps we should discuss this in private. Layla created this system under my and Barbara's direction specifically for SOX compliance and data security. There are regulatory considerations." "Fine," Marcus snapped. "My office now. Leela, start the whatever override process you need, but I want access today." As they walked away, I caught Thomas giving me an apologetic look. I began the security override documentation knowing full well that it could not be completed by the end of the day. Our system was deliberately designed to prevent hasty access changes, a feature that had been praised during our last security audit. I was caught between following proper security protocols and obeying my new boss. It was the beginning of the end of my time at Horizon, though I did not fully realize it yet. The conflict over the secure file system marked a turning point in Marcus's treatment of me. What had been casual dismissal transformed into active hostility. Every morning I would find new critical emails sent at midnight or 5 a.m. questioning procedures that had been standard for years. "Why do board documents require specialized naming conventions?" one email demanded. "This seems needlessly complex and wastes executive time." I responded with a detailed explanation of how the naming system enabled automated indexing and regulatory compliance tracking, attaching the audit report that had specifically commended this feature. My email was met with silence, but the criticism continued the next day on a different topic. In team meetings, Marcus would use me as an example of outdated thinking. "Layla, tell everyone why you think we need 3 separate backup protocols for meeting minutes," he said during one particularly uncomfortable gathering. "Because our healthcare clients and financial auditors require documented decision trails, and in the past we have needed to access historical records during litigation and regulatory reviews," I explained calmly, though my heart was cry-minted. Racing. "See, this is the problem," Marcus said to the room, not to me. "We are building an inefficiency based on edge cases. In the new horizon, we will streamline these processes and free up administrative time for value-added activities." The public humiliation continued with passive-aggressive emails, often CCing department heads or the executive team, checking if there was a reason the visitor log system has not been migrated to the digital platform yet. The paper version in the lobby seems very 1,990 seconds for a tech company. This sent to 15 people, including Thomas and 2 board members, despite the fact that I had submitted the digital migration request 3 weeks earlier and was waiting on approval from Marcus himself. I documented everything. Each snide comment, each unreasonable demand, each instance of being excluded from meetings where my expertise was relevant. I had been at Horizon long enough to recognize when someone was trying to manage me out, creating a paper trail to justify termination or hoping I would quit in frustration. 2 months into Marcus's tenure, the merger announcement became official. A company-wide email from Thomas announced that Horizon Technologies had entered into a definitive agreement to be acquired by Apex Global in a deal valued at $270 million. "This represents a premium of 40% over our current valuation," the email explained. "The board has unanimously approved the agreement contingent upon due diligence and regulatory approval. Over the coming weeks, Apex representatives will be conducting a comprehensive audit of our operations, finances, and technology. We expect the deal to close within 60 days. A town hall meeting followed the announcement. Marcus took center stage, positioned literally at Thomas's right hand, taking credit for steering the negotiation to a successful conclusion. When I was brought in, the board gave me a clear mandate to prepare Horizon for this next chapter, Marcus told the assembled employees. Part of that preparation involves streamlining operations and eliminating redundancies to make us an attractive acquisition target. You will see more changes in the coming weeks as we optimize our structure for the merged entity." The subtext was clear to everyone. Jobs would be cut, departments would be consolidated, only those seen as essential would survive the transition. As I sat in the back of the room, I noticed something concerning in the financial slides Marcus presented. The projected revenue figures did not match what I had filed in the secure system just last week. The discrepancy was subtle, only about $2 million, but significant enough that I made a note to check the source documents. Back at my desk, I tried to access the quarterly financial summaries, only to discover my access had been restricted. This was alarming, as maintaining these files was explicitly part of my job description. I immediately emailed Ryan in IT. "System glitch," I asked. "I cannot access the Q3 financials that I need to update." His response came quickly. "Not a glitch. Direct order from above to limit access to merger-related financials. Sorry." I decided to try a different approach. I still had the hard copies of the previous quarter's reports that I had printed for the board meeting. Comparing them with what Marcus had presented, I found several discrepancies, all small enough to go unnoticed individually, but collectively, painting a more favorable picture than our actual results. This discovery left me with a dilemma. Should I raise concerns about potential financial misrepresentation, and if so, to whom? Marcus was clearly the source of the modified numbers. Thomas might listen, but he seemed increasingly under Marcus's influence. The board, I had no direct access to them without going through proper channels, which now meant going through Marcus. While I pondered this ethical question, I continued my efforts to preserve my position at Horizon. I spent evenings documenting all my processes, creating detailed guides for how the filing system worked, mapping out security protocols, and access hierarchies. If my job was at stake, I wanted to demonstrate just how much institutional knowledge would be lost if I were let go. I tried repeatedly to schedule a meeting with Thomas, hoping to explain the complexity of the secure system before the Apex audit began. His assistant kept rescheduling, always with polite excuses about merger preparations, keeping his calendar full. Finally, I went to Denise in HR, my old lunch friend, who now barely made eye contact in the hallways. "I need your advice professionally," I said, closing her office door after confirming she had a few minutes. "My role has been systematically diminished, my access restricted, and I believe Marcus is building a case to terminate me. What are my options?" Denise looked genuinely pained. "Layla, I wish I had better news. There have been discussions about restructuring the administrative functions. I argued for your position, pointed out your institutional knowledge, and the critical role you play in information management. And I prompted when she paused. And I was overruled. Marcus has a very specific vision for the post-merger organization, and it involves fewer dedicated administrative positions and more cross-functional project managers. So I'm being pushed out because my job title does not sound impressive enough. The injustice of it made my voice shake. It is more complicated than that. Marcus comes from companies with different operational models. He genuinely believes he is optimizing the organization." She hesitated. "But between us, I think he also feels threatened by staff who were close to Barbara and who understand systems he does not control." As the merger preparations intensified, the personal toll began to mount. I had trouble sleeping, waking at 3 a.m. with anxiety about financial insecurity. As a single mother with a mortgage, and my daughter Zoe's college fund to consider, losing my job was not just a professional setback, but a threat to our stability. My friend Lisa noticed the change in me during our weekly coffee meetup. "You look exhausted," she said bluntly. "Is it that bad at work?" I nodded, too tired to maintain the professional facade I kept up at the office. "I think I am being pushed out after 8 years of building their systems from nothing. And I do not know how to fight it without seeming like I am obstructing the merger, which would only make things worse." "Document everything," Lisa advised. "And remember that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth." My education actually proved perfect for this role. Information management systems is all about organizing data for maximum efficiency and security. I applied those principles to create a digital filing system that Barbara called revolutionary for our workflow. The system I built was complex on the back end, but intuitive for users, with one critical feature that would later become the center of this drama-enhanced security protocols for our most sensitive documents. But the writing was on the wall. My responsibilities continued to shrink. My isolation grew, and Marcus's criticism became more pointed. It was only a matter of time before the other shoe dropped. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. "Marcus would like to see you in the main conference room," Brittany said over the phone, her voice carefully neutral. "Right away, please." I knew immediately what this meant. The main conference room, not his office. Multiple people present, not a one-on-one conversation. This was going to be a termination. Despite anticipating this moment for weeks, my hands shook as I gathered my personal phone and keycard. I left everything else at my desk, including the family photo of Zoe and me at her high school graduation that had sat on my desk for years. I would either return for it or someone would box it up for me. When I entered the conference room, my suspicions were confirmed. Marcus sat at the head of the table with Thomas to his right and Denise to his left. A folder lay closed in front of each of them. Denise could not meet my eyes, but Thomas gave me a small nod that contained what seemed like an apology. A few loyal colleagues continued to check on me. Ryan from IT would send technical questions that gave him an excuse to stop by my desk. Sophia from marketing still invited me to lunch occasionally, though we now went to cafes far from the office to avoid gossip. These small kindnesses kept me going through increasingly difficult days. I sat down back, straight, hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. "I assume this is about the reorganization ahead of the merger," I said, proud that my voice remained steady. "Layla, please have a seat." Marcus began gesturing to the chair directly opposite him, maximizing the distance between us. "We have called you here to discuss your role at Horizon Technologies." I nodded, but said nothing, forcing him to continue without my help. "After careful review of all administrative functions, we have determined that your current role will not exist in the new organizational chart. We are consolidating administrative support under a project management framework that aligns with Apex's operational model. It was corporate speak for "you are fired," dressed up in buzzwords and passive voice to remove any sense of personal responsibility. "I see," I said quietly. And the systems I created and maintained, the secure file architecture, the compliance protocols, the audit trails, who will manage those during the transition? Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Marcus waved a dismissive hand. We have consultants who will handle the technical aspects of any systems migration. Modern cloud architecture makes these transitions much simpler than they used to be. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Our system was modern, but it was also customized to our specific compliance needs and security protocols. It was not something you could simply migrate to a generic platform without understanding its architecture. And when would this transition occur? I asked. Effective immediately, Marcus replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. We find that clean breaks are best for all parties. Immediately, I repeated, genuinely shocked, despite my preparation. Without any knowledge transfer, without documentation review, without transition planning. It was then that Marcus showed his true colors, leaning forward with a smirk that I suspect he thought was hidden from Thomas and Denise. Let me be clear, Layla. You are just admin. Your role is easily replaceable. The complex systems you think you created are basic file management that any entry-level IT person can handle. Your resistance to modernization has been noted throughout this process, and frankly, it is one of the reasons we are making this change now rather than waiting until after the merger. The room went silent. Even Thomas looked taken aback by the naked contempt in Marcus's voice. Denise cleared her throat. We have prepared a separation package, she said, opening her folder and sliding papers across to me. 2 months severance continuation of benefits for 60 days, and an excellent reference letter that I drafted personally highlighting your contributions to Horizon. I left the papers untouched on the table, and the transition of my duties, my current projects, the secure files that only I have complete documentation for. You will be escorted to your desk to collect personal belongings, Marcus cut in. Company property, including all files and documents, remains with Horizon. Brett from security is waiting outside to accompany you. The humiliation of being escorted out like a criminal after 8 years of dedicated service was the final insult. I stood up slowly, leaving the separation papers on the table. I hope you have thought this through, I said, quietly, looking directly at Thomas rather than Marcus. The merger audit begins tomorrow. The auditors will need access to the secure financial documentation. Without proper transition, you may find that challenging. Thomas frowned slightly. We have IT working on full system access. It should not be a problem. I nodded, knowing better, but choosing not to argue further. Then I wish you all the best with the merger. It has been an interesting 8 years. Brett, a security guard who had always greeted me warmly each morning, now stood awkwardly by my side as I collected my family photo, a plant, and a few personal items from my desk. Colleagues watched with wide eyes, a few mouthing sorry or looking away in discomfort. I held my head high as I walked through the lobby, one last time, but the moment I reached my car in the parking garage, the tears came in a flood. 8 years of my professional life dismissed as just admin work. A system I had built from scratch now left without anyone who truly understood its architecture. And the personal rejection of being escorted out of a building where I had poured my heart and soul into my work. The drive home was a blur of tears and anger. My phone buzzed with text messages from colleagues, but I could not bring myself to read them yet. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for several minutes, trying to compose myself before going inside. Zoe was home from college for the week, and I did not want her to see me falling apart. Finally, I checked my phone. 5 messages from Ryan in IT. I just heard, "This is insane. They cut your access before you could even transition anything. No one gave us any documentation about your secure folders. Marcus is telling us to just reset all the passwords, but we cannot, without triggering security protocols. This is going to be a disaster tomorrow for the audit." 3 messages from Sophia in marketing. I cannot believe they did this to you. Everyone is in shock. Let me know if you need anything. I mean it. And 1 from an unknown number that turned out to be from Thomas's personal phone. This was handled poorly. I apologize. If we need your assistance during transition, would you be open to consulting on a contract basis? I put the phone away without responding to any of them. Tomorrow, they would discover exactly what happens when you fire the one person who understands your critical systems without proper transition. But tonight, I needed to figure out how to tell my daughter I had lost my job and to start thinking about what came next for us. As I walked toward my front door, a memory surfaced from 3 years ago. A system upgrade had required me to create new security protocols for our financial documentation. I had implemented military-grade encryption for certain folders containing acquisition strategies and financial projections, with a complex password system that required specific credentials. "This seems like overkill," Thomas had said at the time. "Who exactly are we protecting these files from?" "From anyone who should not have access," I had replied, "including disgruntled employees, hackers, or competitors. Information is power, Thomas. We should control who has it." The irony was not lost on me. In trying to protect Horizon's information from outside threats, I had created a system that now protected it from its own leadership's hasty decisions. The detailed documentation for the secure system had been in my desk drawer in a folder labeled Security Protocols, Confidential. In my distress and the rushed exit, I had left it behind, but I doubted anyone would think to look for it, at least not before tomorrow's audit. I took a deep breath and entered my home, pushing away thoughts of work to focus on my immediate family crisis. But a small, unprofessional part of me wondered what would happen when the Apex auditors requested access to files that no one at Horizon could provide. Thursday morning arrived with a sense of surrealism. Instead of my usual 6 a.m. alarm and rushed preparation for the office, I found myself still in pajamas at 9, updating my resume at the kitchen table. Zoe had been supportive but concerned when I told her about losing my job immediately, offering to take fewer credits next semester to save on tuition. I had assured her that with my severance and savings, we would be fine while I looked for a new position. Besides, I had told her with forced optimism, my skills are transferable. Many companies need someone who can create and manage information systems. As I polished the bullet points on my resume, trying to translate just admin work into language that highlighted my technical and strategic contributions, news alerts kept appearing on my phone. Horizon Technologies stock had jumped 5% on news that the merger with Apex Global was entering final stages, with the audit beginning today. I felt a strange disconnection seeing the company I had devoted 8 years to continuing on without me, its value literally increasing, as I sat unemployed at my kitchen table. Then my phone rang. It was Ryan from IT. "Layla," he said when I answered, his voice hushed and urgent. "You would not believe what is happening here." "I am not sure I want to know," I replied honestly. The wound was still too fresh. "Trust me, you do." The Apex audit team arrived at 8 this morning. 6 people in suits with those rolling briefcases looking like the financial SWAT team. Marcus has been showing them around doing his visionary leader routine. Despite myself, I was curious. And how is that going? It was all handshakes and corporate small talk until they got to the financial review. They are set up in the main conference room now, and Marcus was showing them how to access the quarterly reports when it happened. When what happened, I asked, though I was beginning to suspect. He clicked on the secure financial folder, and boom, password prompt. Not just any password prompt, but that triple authentication system you set up for the most sensitive documents. Marcus tried the standard admin credentials, but they got rejected. Then he tried to override it with his director access, also rejected. I could picture the scene perfectly, and a small petty part of me wished I could have witnessed it. What did Marcus do? First, he blamed the system, said it was glitching. Then he called the IT team in to fix it on the spot, with the Apex people just sitting there watching. Jake tried to explain that we cannot bypass the security protocols without proper authorization, and Marcus nearly exploded. The security system was working exactly as designed. After 3 failed password attempts, it would lock down completely, requiring a specific recovery protocol that involved multiple department heads and a 72-hour waiting period, a feature specifically requested by our legal team to prevent unauthorized access during high-stress situations like acquisition. The best part, Ryan continued, his voice, now barely above a whisper, was when the lead auditor, this really serious guy named Peterson, closed his binder and turned to Thomas. He said, "Perhaps we should reschedule until you can provide the required documentation access. Apex has strict protocols about financial verification before closing." The room went completely silent. I could imagine Thomas's face at that moment. As CFO, he understood better than anyone what a delayed audit could mean for the merger timeline. What happened then, I asked. Marcus started promising they would have it fixed within the hour. Peterson just looked at his watch and said they had a tight schedule with multiple audits this week. Then Thomas asked for a private moment with the Horizon team, and the Apex people left the room. And total meltdown. Marcus is blaming everyone, the IT department, the security protocols, even Barbara's leadership, for allowing such a Byzantine system to be created. Thomas finally had to tell him to calm down because the Apex team could probably hear him through the walls. As Ryan continued describing the unfolding chaos at Horizon, my other line beeped with an incoming call. The screen showed Thomas's office number. Ryan, I need to go. Keep me posted if you can. I switched to the other call. Hello, this is Layla. Layla, Thomas Reed here. His voice sounded strained. I hope I am not interrupting anything important. The irony of his concern about interrupting my unemployment was not lost on me. Not at all. What can I do for you, Thomas? We seem to be having an issue with the secure file access for the Apex audit. The system is requesting passwords that our IT team cannot provide or override. I waited, saying nothing, forcing him to continue. I understand that yesterday's transition was abrupt, and that there was not adequate time for knowledge transfer. In retrospect, that was an oversight on our part. Still, I remained silent. Thomas sighed. Layla, we need your help. The audit cannot proceed without access to these files, and the Apex team is considering postponing the entire process, which could delay or even jeopardize the merger. I see, I said neutrally. And how would you like me to help? We need the passwords and security protocols for the financial documentation folders. Specifically, the acquisition planning documents, the last 6 quarters of financial reports, and the projected integration models. Those are under the highest security level with encryption that cannot be bypassed without proper authorization. I explained as if he did not already know this. By design, there is no master password. Each folder has unique credentials with a specific access protocol. Can you come in and help us navigate the system? We would compensate you for your time, of course. I considered my options carefully. I could refuse, let them suffer the consequences of their hasty decision. That would certainly provide some satisfaction in the short term. But it might also burn bridges in an industry where reputations matter, and despite everything I had colleagues at Horizon I still respected. I would need to consider the terms of such an arrangement, I said carefully. Given that I am no longer an employee, my assistance would be as an independent consultant with appropriate rates and conditions. Of course, Thomas agreed quickly. Whatever you think is fair. The important thing is getting this resolved before the Apex team leaves for the day. I will need some time to consider this. I will call you back within the hour. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, turning over the situation in my mind. The company that had just fired me, that had escorted me out like a criminal, that had dismissed my work as just admin, now desperately needed my expertise. There was undeniable power in that knowledge. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Sophia. Oh my God, audit disaster in progress. Marcus looks like he is about to have a stroke. Please tell me you are going to make them beg for help. Then another call from Denise in HR. Layla, I know you have heard from Thomas already. I just wanted to add personally that the way your termination was handled was unprofessional, and I am truly sorry. If you decide to help us out of this situation, I want you to know I will fully support whatever terms you require. By noon, my phone had not stopped buzzing with calls and texts from increasingly desperate Horizon employees. The situation had apparently escalated further when the Apex audit team announced they would be leaving at 3 p.m. with or without the documentation review completed. Then at 12:30, the call I had been half expecting came through. Marcus Prescott. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking deep breaths to maintain my composure. This is Layla. Layla, Marcus Prescott. His voice had none of the condescending tone from yesterday. We have a situation here with the audit that requires your specific knowledge of our filing system. So I have heard, I replied neutrally. I am going to be straight with you. We need access to those secure files today, or the audit team walks. If they walk, the merger timeline is compromised. If the timeline slips, we could lose millions in valuation. I need you to come in and fix this. The lack of apology, the assumption that he could still dictate terms to me, was remarkable. Fix the situation that was created when I was terminated without transition planning, I clarified. Look water under the bridge. We can discuss compensation for your time. Actually, Marcus, I think we need to discuss more than just hourly compensation. If I am going to help Horizon out of this crisis, I need to understand what happened yesterday and what has changed today that makes my knowledge suddenly valuable rather than easily replaceable. There was a pause, then I do not have time for this. We have an audit team waiting and a $250 million merger on the line. Name your consulting rate and get in here. That is not how this is going to work, I said, surprised by my own calm. If you want my help, I need to speak with Thomas and the board about terms that go beyond a one-day consulting fee. Are you threatening to withhold critical company information unless we meet your demands? His voice had risen to a near shout, because that could constitute corporate extortion, and our legal team would be very interested in that approach. I am declining to provide services as an independent consultant under terms that are not acceptable to me, I corrected. The information security protocols I created while employed at Horizon were documented and left in my desk. If you cannot locate them, that is an internal issue with your transition planning, not my legal obligation to resolve. The silence that followed told me I had called his bluff. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice tight with suppressed rage. What do you want? A meeting with Thomas and a board representative to discuss appropriate terms, not with you, Marcus. Fine. 1 hour. Boardroom. He hung up without another word. As I dressed in my most professional outfit, I called Lisa, who happened to be a corporate attorney. They fired you yesterday, and now they need your help. Oh, this is delicious, she said when I explained the situation. What are you going to ask for? I am not sure yet. What would be reasonable? In this situation, the world, honey. But let us be strategic. They need you today, which means you have significant leverage, but it is short-term leverage. You need to translate that into long-term security. With Lisa's advice fresh in my mind, I drove to Horizon with a clear plan and a strange mix of anxiety and confidence. Whatever happened next would determine not just how this chapter of my career ended, but how the next one would begin. As I pulled into the Horizon Technologies parking lot, the security guard did a double take. Miss Anderson, I thought you had left the company. Just visiting for a meeting, Carl, I replied with a smile. I believe Mr. Reed is expecting me. Carl checked his visitor list and nodded. Yes, ma'am. You are on the list as a priority visitor. Let me print you a badge. The badge he handed me read Consultant in bold letters, a small but significant upgrade from the visitor badge typically given to delivery people and job candidates. Walking through the lobby felt surreal, like returning to a familiar dream. Employees stopped to stare, some offering tentative smiles or nods of acknowledgement. Word had clearly spread about the audit crisis and my return. Ryan intercepted me near the elevator. You are a legend, he whispered. The Apex team gave them a 3 p.m. deadline to produce the documents or they walk. Marcus has been trying to convince them that this is just a minor, technical issue, but no one is buying it. How is Thomas handling it, I asked. Better than Marcus. He at least acknowledges there was a mistake in transition planning. The board chair is here too. Patricia Reynolds. She flew in when she heard about the audit problems. This was an unexpected development but potentially beneficial. Patricia had always been respectful of my work during her quarterly visits. When I arrived at the boardroom, Thomas was waiting outside. Layla, thank you for coming, he said, extending his hand. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate your willingness to help resolve this situation. I shook his hand firmly. I am here to discuss terms, Thomas. After that, we will see about resolution. He nodded, looking tired but resigned. Patricia is inside. Marcus wanted to attend, but we thought it would be more productive to keep this focused. Smart decision, I thought. Patricia Reynolds rose as I entered, extending her hand with the confidence of someone used to closing multi-million-dollar deals. Miss Anderson, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please have a seat. I took the chair across from them, setting my purse deliberately on the table, and removing a notebook and pen, taking my time. Power dynamics are established in the first moments of negotiation, and I wanted them to understand this was a business discussion between equals, not an employee being summoned by management. I understand Horizon is experiencing difficulties with the secure file system during the Apex audit I began professionally, and that these difficulties are impacting the merger timeline. Thomas nodded. The audit team cannot complete their review without access to our financial documentation. As you know, those files are in the secure system you created. The secure system I created at the direction of Horizon leadership with specific security protocols approved by the board's security committee, I clarified. Yes, of course, Patricia acknowledged. A system that has served us well, particularly during previous audits and regulatory reviews. The issue today is not with the system itself, but with our failure to properly transition its management before your departure. Her direct acknowledgement of the company's error was refreshing. Thomas looked uncomfortable but nodded in agreement. To be clear, I continued. I left detailed documentation in my desk regarding all security protocols and access procedures. Was that documentation not located? Thomas cleared his throat. It was located this morning. However, the recovery procedures outlined require 72 hours to implement due to the security lockdown triggered by multiple failed access attempts. And the Apex audit team is not willing to wait 72 hours, I concluded. They have other audits scheduled. Any significant delay could push our merger back by weeks or months, potentially affecting the valuation and terms, Patricia explained. I see. So Horizon needs a solution today, not in 72 hours. Exactly, Thomas confirmed. We were hoping you might have administrator access that could bypass the waiting period. I allowed a small smile. The system was specifically designed at Barbara and the board's request to prevent anyone, including administrators, from bypassing security protocols. That is what makes it secure. Patricia leaned forward. Layla, let us be direct. We made a significant error in how your transition was handled. The way Marcus managed your departure was neither appropriate nor representative of how Horizon values its employees, particularly someone with your tenure and contributions. We would like to correct that error and secure your assistance with this immediate issue. This was the opening I had been waiting for. I appreciate your candor, Patricia. Before we discuss the immediate issue, I would like to clarify my terms for providing assistance not just today but going forward. I opened my notebook, though I knew my terms by heart after rehearsing them during the drive over. First, I would like full reinstatement as an employee of Horizon Technologies with a new title of Information Systems Manager that better reflects my actual responsibilities and expertise. Thomas and Patricia exchanged glances but did not interrupt. Second, this position would include a guaranteed 2-year contract with a salary increase of 30% over my previous compensation, reflecting both market rates for this specialization and the critical nature of these systems to Horizon's operations. Thomas winced slightly at the number, but Patricia's expression remained neutral. Third, a formal acknowledgement from leadership, including Marcus, regarding the inappropriate handling of my termination and the value of the systems I created. That might be difficult given the circumstances, Thomas began, but Patricia held up a hand to stop him. Continue with your terms, she said to me. Finally, I would require direct reporting to the Chief Technology Officer, once appointed in the merged organization, or to the CFO, in the interim bypassing any intermediate management that might not understand the technical aspects of the data. Information security. I closed my notebook and looked at them expectantly. Patricia was the first to speak. Your terms are significant but not unreasonable given the situation. The title change and reporting structure makes sense from an organizational perspective. The compensation increase is higher than standard, but I understand the rationale. Thomas looked less convinced. The 2-year guarantee during a merger integration is unusual. Typically, all positions are subject to review during consolidation. Typically, companies do not lose access to critical financial documentation during merger audits, I countered. My terms reflect the unique value I bring and the importance of stability in information management during transition. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. The board would need to approve the contract terms, but given the circumstances, I believe I can secure that approval. However, we need an immediate solution to today's audit issue before we can finalize any long-term arrangement. It was a reasonable point. I understand the urgency. I am prepared to assist with the audit access today as a show of good faith, with the understanding that my terms will be formally accepted and documented by close of business tomorrow. And if we cannot meet that timeline for the formal agreement, Thomas asked. Then I remain a consultant billing at standard information security specialist rates of $300 per hour, with a minimum engagement of 20 hours per week, I replied smoothly, quoting the rates Lisa had researched for me. Patricia almost smiled. You have prepared well for this discussion, Layla. I propose the following: you help us resolve the immediate audit issue today. I will have legal draft the employment agreement with your terms by noon tomorrow. Assuming no major issues with the language, we can finalize by end of day tomorrow. And Marcus, I asked. I cannot work effectively in an environment where my role and expertise are not respected. Marcus has been seconded to lead the transition team, working primarily from the Apex offices after the merger closes, Patricia said diplomatically. Your paths would rarely cross, and your direct reporting would be as you specified. Reading between the lines, it seemed Marcus was already being sidelined, possibly due to how he had handled my termination and the resulting audit crisis. That was satisfaction enough for me. Then we have an agreement in principle, I said, extending my hand. Patricia shook it firmly. Indeed we do. Thomas will work with you on the immediate technical needs, and I will handle the board and the paperwork. As we stood to leave, Thomas looked simultaneously relieved and somewhat chastened. For what it is worth, Layla, I apologize for not intervening more effectively yesterday. Your contributions have always been valued by me, even if I did not always express that clearly. I nodded, accepting his apology without needing to verbalize forgiveness. Some professional wounds take time to heal, but this was a start. As we walked toward the conference room where the Apex audit team waited, I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication certainly, but also a renewed sense of purpose. In the space of 24 hours, I had gone from dismissed as just admin to recognized as an essential specialist whose expertise commanded respect and appropriate compensation. The irony was not lost on me that it had taken a crisis of their own making for Horizon's leadership to see what Barbara had recognized years ago, that titles do not define value, and that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one whose contribution has been most overlooked. The mood in the main conference room was tense when Thomas and I entered. The Apex audit team sat on one side of the long table, their expressions professionally neutral, but with an undercurrent of impatience. Marcus stood at the far end mid-sentence about technical issues being resolved momentarily, stopping abruptly when he saw me. Ah, here is our information systems specialist now, Thomas said smoothly, as if I had never been fired at all. Layla has agreed to assist with accessing the secure documentation you need for your review. The lead auditor, Peterson, checked his watch pointedly. We have 45 minutes before we need to leave for our next appointment. Will that be sufficient? It should be, I replied confidently, moving to the computer at the head of the table. Marcus stepped toward me, lowering his voice. I assume Thomas discussed the situation with you. Whatever he promised, I expect you to remember your confidentiality obligations as a former employee. I met his gaze calmly. Actually, Marcus, I am no longer a former employee. The board has agreed to reinstate me as Information Systems Manager, reporting directly to the CTO effective immediately. The look of shock on his face was brief but deeply satisfying. We can discuss organizational changes later, Thomas intervened diplomatically. For now, let us focus on providing the Apex team with what they need. I turned to the computer and began navigating through the file system, explaining as I worked. Our secure documents are protected by a multi-layered authentication system designed specifically to prevent unauthorized access during sensitive transitions like mergers and acquisitions. This is actually a selling point for your security compliance team. I directed this last comment to Peterson, who nodded with professional interest. The system includes encrypted folders with unique access protocols for different categories of financial documentation. What appeared to be a roadblock earlier was actually a security feature working as designed. The technical explanation seemed to reassure the audit team, transforming what had been perceived as a corporate failure into a demonstration of Horizon's commitment to data security. Within minutes, I had navigated through the authentication protocols, entering the complex passwords and security responses that unlocked the financial documentation. The screen filled with neatly organized folders containing every document the audit team had requested. There you are, I said, stepping back from the computer. You now have access to all quarterly reports, acquisition planning, documents, and financial projections for the past 2 years. The files are read only to maintain audit integrity, but you can save copies for your review as needed. Peterson and his team looked impressed despite themselves. This is exceptionally well organized, he commented, already clicking through the files. Most companies we audit require hours just to locate the correct documentation versions. Information architecture is a specialty of mine, I replied simply. For the next 30 minutes, I assisted the audit team as they navigated through the documentation, explaining the organization system and helping them locate specific items on their checklist. Marcus remained in the room but stayed unusually quiet, his earlier bluster replaced by careful observation. When the audit team had everything they needed, Peterson closed his laptop with a satisfied nod. This has been most helpful. We should be able to complete our preliminary report by early next week, barring any issues with the documentation we will review. And the merger timeline, Thomas asked the question everyone wanted answered. Assuming our review confirms what we have seen so far, I see no reason for any delays on our end, Peterson replied. Your information security protocols are actually more robust than many we encounter, which is a positive factor in our assessment. As the audit team packed up their materials, Peterson approached me directly. Miss Anderson, your filing system is impressive. Many companies treat information architecture as an afterthought rather than a strategic asset. Thank you. It has been 8 years in development, I replied. Well, Apex Global could benefit from this approach. Perhaps we can discuss implementation across the merged entity once the deal closes. After the audit team departed, the room's atmosphere shifted. Thomas looked visibly relieved. Several executive team members who had been hovering anxiously in the background began to relax, and Marcus stood awkwardly to the side, clearly unsure of his position in this new reality. Patricia Reynolds entered the room, having apparently waited until the audit team left. I understand everything went well, she said, looking to me for confirmation. The audit team has everything they need. Peterson indicated there should be no delays to the merger timeline, I reported. Excellent. Marcus, I need you to join a call with the Apex transition team in my office. Thomas and I would like a moment with Layla to discuss her reinstatement details. The dismissal was polite but firm. Marcus nodded stiffly and left without looking in my direction. Over the next week, my return to Horizon unfolded with a surreal quality. My new employment agreement was finalized as promised, with all the terms I had requested, and even a signing bonus that Patricia had added in recognition of the circumstances. My new office was no longer in the administrative section, but in the executive wing, a physical manifestation of my elevated status. Most telling was how quickly Marcus seemed to fade from the company's daily operations. As Patricia had indicated, he was focused on transition planning, which apparently required his presence at Apex's headquarters more often than at Horizon. 2 weeks after the audit crisis, the merger was officially announced as approved by all regulatory bodies, with a closing date set for the following month. Horizon's stock jumped 12% on the news, and an all-staff email from Thomas credited the seamless audit process as a key factor in the rapid approval. The most surprising development came 3 weeks later, when Patricia called me into a private meeting. The Apex leadership team was extremely impressed with your information security architecture, she began. So impressed, in fact, that they have requested you lead the implementation of a similar system across the merged company, reporting directly to their CTO. That would be a significant expansion of responsibility, I noted, thinking of the implications. It would indeed, with corresponding adjustments to your compensation and title. They are suggesting Director of Information Management for the combined entity. The irony was almost too perfect. From fired as just admin to a director role in the span of 6 weeks. And Marcus, I asked, curious about how this reorganization would affect him. Patricia's diplomatic smile told me everything before she even spoke. Marcus has decided to pursue other opportunities after the transition period. His expertise is in preparing companies for acquisition, not in post-merger integration. Translation: he was being pushed out, his value exhausted once the deal closed. There was a certain poetic justice in it, though I took no pleasure in anyone losing their job, having so recently experienced that pain myself. The merger closed successfully the following month, and I found myself leading a team of specialists, implementing my information architecture system across a company 5 times Horizon's size. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying, bringing recognition to the importance of well-designed information systems in corporate security and efficiency. As for Marcus, I heard through industry connections that he had landed at another tech company, presumably to work his modernization magic there. I could only hope the administrative staff at his new company would be valued more appropriately than I had been. In the quiet moments between meetings and implementation planning, I often reflected on the whirlwind journey of the past few months. What had begun as a painful rejection had transformed into an opportunity I might never have sought on my own. The initial satisfaction of vindication eventually gave way to deeper reflection. While I had every right to feel angry about how I had been treated, holding on to that anger would only limit my future growth. Instead, I channeled my energy into building a more supportive team culture in my new position, ensuring that contributions were recognized regardless of title or position. I made a point of knowing the names and roles of everyone in my expanded department, from the newest data entry clerk to the senior security specialists. In team meetings, I created space for all voices to be heard, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and determined not to perpetuate that experience for others. When Zoe came home for winter break, she noticed the change in me immediately. "You seem different, Mom. More confident." "I feel different," I admitted. "I always knew my work had value, but now others recognize it too. And more importantly, I recognize it more fully myself." "So getting fired was actually a good thing?" she asked, skeptically. I laughed. I would not go that far. But sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal what truly matters both to you and to others. The title on my business card changed, but the work I do and the person I am did not. The difference is that now there is alignment between what I contribute and how that contribution is valued. As I settled into my new role and the merged company found its rhythm, I kept returning to a few key lessons from this experience. First, know your worth beyond job titles. The work you do has intrinsic value that does not diminish just because someone fails to recognize it. Second, document your contributions meticulously. In my case, this was literal with secure folders and passwords, but for everyone, having a clear record of your impact is invaluable when you need to demonstrate your worth. Third, standing up for yourself professionally is not just about personal vindication, it is about establishing the correct value of your work in the marketplace. By advocating for appropriate recognition and compensation, you help set standards that benefit others as well. Fourth, even in crisis moments, maintain your professionalism. How you respond to unfair treatment says more about your character than how others treat you. And finally, sometimes what looks like failure is actually the redirect you need to find greater success. Had I not been fired, I might have remained in my administrative specialist role indefinitely, never realizing my potential for leadership in information systems management. The $270 million merger, that almost failed because of a password, became the catalyst for my own professional transformation. Sometimes the most valuable password is not the one that protects your data, but the one that unlocks your true potential. What experiences have you had where an apparent setback turned into an opportunity? Have you ever been undervalued in your workplace? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments below. Hit the like button if this resonated with you and subscribe for more real-life workplace stories. Remember, your worth is not determined by your title or how others perceive you, but by the value you bring and your willingness to stand up for that value. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep knowing your worth.